Both groups of officers will make out like bandits. Both groups will then, the entities will then lose because it's a myth that there was no skin in the game.
Okay.
You could only sell the stuff through reps and warranties.
Right.
And that's why you see all these massive Justice Department recoveries.
Okay.
It's because of the fraudulent reps and warranties.
Right.
It's also a myth that the Justice Department couldn't have prosecuted.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
And welcome to the program. Dustin Harris hanging out with you at the Valuation Expo 2018 here in Las Vegas, Nevada, sitting down with a very important guest. But before we do that, let me remind you we are sponsored by three great companies. Of course, DataMaster being one of them. DataMaster right next to me today, in the booth next to me. And you will hear during this interview the Screaming Monkeys. That's right. Here at you just got to be here, folks. You just got to be here to even know what that's all about. But DataMaster, of course, is a great company. You can find them at datamasterusa.com. We are sponsored by, of course, Working RE. Just barely got done talking with Isaac Peck, the editor at Working RE. Just stopped by my booth. We had a really, really good talk. Smart people, folks, really understand what's going on in the appraisal business, and you need to check them out. Go to workingre.com. That is workingre.com for more information. And finally, of course, we are sponsored by Alamode. Alamode is the software that I use to do my appraisal work. Have been doing for 2 decades now. Will continue to use Alamode as long as they continue to provide me the great service, the great value that they do provide. Go to alamode.com or check them out by calling them at 800-ALAMODE. All right, folks, have an interesting guest sitting in front of me, Mr. Bill Black, and let's dive into that interview right now. All right, folks, Dustin Harris hanging out with you at the Expo here at the Flamingo in Las Vegas. And I'm sitting down today with the keynote speaker here at the Expo here in 2018, Mr. Bill Black. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
It's good to have you. So keynote, that's pretty big. You got a shine on your head today. That little star on your forehead. That's pretty cool. Tell us a little bit about yourself. If the listeners have not heard of Bill Black, who are you?
So I'm a prof at the University of Missouri at Kansas City. My primary appointment's in economics. I have a joint appointment in law. I also have a doctorate in criminology, and I specialize in elite white-collar crime and financial regulation. Former financial regulator, former banker, serial whistleblower.
So we could basically boil that down into you're just a really smart guy.
No, but I've been someone who made many what in my law firm I started at was called career-limiting gestures.
Interesting.
CLGs.
I love it. Okay, cool. So you were asked to speak today. Tell us a little bit about your presentation. What was the topic?
So the topic was the warnings that were given and why they were ignored about the great financial crisis. And the thrust of it was the great financial crisis of 2008 was the easiest crisis to avoid of any major crisis. And the reason it was so easy to avoid was because of the quality and the timeliness of the warning of the appraiser's petition process.
Okay, talk to me. Let's go into depth a little bit here. What specifically, what are you talking about there?
So in 1998, the often rival professional associations of appraisers realized there was an immense problem and that they had to work together to try to solve it.
Okay, and the problem was?
And the problem was lenders extorting honest appraisers to inflate appraisals and blacklisting honest appraisers who refused to do so.
Okay.
And it took them 2 years to get these rival groups together on a common strategy and to implement that strategy. And the strategy they figured out was a very sensible one. They would create a public petition, and they would put it online so that appraisers could join in this petition. Eventually, 11,000 appraisers signed the petition, at which point they cut it off saying, if 11,000 of us won't convince you, probably 13,000 won't do so either.
Right.
So I call this the perfect warning because it's unambiguous. Nobody extorts an appraiser negligently or oops. It's an intentional act. They identified who it was coming from, the lenders and their agents, the brokers and such, loan brokers and such. And they indicated the fraud mechanism, which was what we call aggression's dynamic. In aggression's dynamic, bad ethics drives good ethics out of the marketplace or the professions. If you create a competitive advantage for cheaters, then market forces become perverse.
Right.
And lenders were deliberately creating this perverse incentive. But the key question is why?
Okay.
Appraisers focus, and I think they know why, because if the loan doesn't close, nobody gets their fees.
Right.
And without the inflated appraisal, the loan doesn't close.
So the loan officers, what you're saying, the loan officers are pushing appraisers to, quote unquote, come in at or above value, whatever that definition is. In other words, we need a minimum of X amount to make this work. Appraiser, we really need you to make this work for us.
Well, X is not unclear. X is the loan amount.
Okay, right.
So yes, you have to come in at least at the loan amount and preferably higher. In these circumstances.
Or what? What is the repercussion?
We will refuse to use you as an appraiser again. We will blacklist honest appraisers, as perverse as that is.
Now, Bill, were they outwardly saying this, or was this kind of a just kind of under the surface agreed upon thing? In other words, appraisers, I've been appraising a long time. And I don't remember, other than maybe a couple of, if I really thought hard, a couple of experiences where they were kind of overtly saying things that were out of line. But it seems to me like most of this was just kind of understood. That as appraisers, if you didn't continually hit that number, that you're probably not going to be doing business with that company anymore.
So the answer is it's both. And you're quite right that typically, always they would prefer to leave it unsaid.
Sure.
For obvious reasons, because this is a felony.
Yes.
But we have in writing many cases where they did it, and we have the testimony of whistleblowers, appraisers, that say that they were orally told of the extortion as well.
Okay.
But you're correct that if you're better at the fraud scheme, what you do is simply refuse to use the appraiser again, and the appraiser has nothing that they can testify to
no
other
recourse
than
as to why.
the fact that they no longer are getting engagements.
Right.
Now, as I said, some of the folks like WAMU were so crude that they typically orally extorted the appraisal consortiums, I'll call them.
Okay.
But the consortiums then put it in writing. That said, we were extorted to do the following, which is quite a remarkable thing.
Yeah.
And this is revealed in the New York Attorney General, then Cuomo, now governor of the state of New York, Cuomo's lawsuits, where they have just extraordinary documentation, including the phrase we're going to have to roll over to WAMU's demands and such, and where the demands were explicitly that you were supposed to use the WAMU approved list of appraisers, and the approved list of appraisers were folks who came in at loan amount.
Probably coincidence.
Yeah, probably coincidence if you believe in such things, but nobody does.
Yeah.
In any event, this warning, again, begins in 1998. That is 3 years before Enron fails.
Okay.
We're used to thinking of the Enron crisis as the crisis before, but the 2008 financial crisis was rapidly building
10 years previous, right.
before
Yeah.
Enron occurred. And so you had a full 10 years of warning because all of the banking regulatory agencies had senior appraisers who were aware of this effort no later than 1998 and such. So if they had acted upon it, there wouldn't have been a crisis. And acting upon it is the easiest decision ever. So what I stressed to the appraiser audience is, how do you fit in from a banking regulator's perspective?
Right.
What is this all about?
Right.
Right? And appraisers are one of the 3 C's of underwriting. So as young bankers, we would have been taught, actually our first lesson after where the bathroom was,
Sure.
is the 3 C's of underwriting. And we've known this for well over a century. They are collateral, which is the appraisal.
Right.
They are capacity, which is why liar's loans were such a immense fraud scheme, because that inflates
Increase
the
the
borrower's
value. Yep.
income and makes it look like they have the capacity to repay a loan that they have
they
no
don't.
capacity to repay.
Right.
And the third, of course, is the credit rating. And we've known for over a century that if you don't do these 3 C's, you will have what we call in economics adverse selection.
Right. Okay.
So I did the example of the Bank of Bill and the Bank of Dustin, right? And the Bank of Bill can't do underwriting. We just, we're incapable of it, or maybe we deliberately don't do it. So we charge everybody 15% interest rate.
Okay.
Bank of Dustin does underwriting, and to simplify it, we'll just say there's high risk and low risk.
Right. Risk assessment.
Right. So you charge low-risk folks 10%, and you charge high-risk folks 20%.
Right. Okay.
And so I asked the audience, how many good quality borrowers will come to the Bank of Bill? And the answer, of course, is none, because they would have to
They
pay
get 15%,
and they can go to the
get
Bank
it for
of
10.
Dustin and get
Sure.
it for 10. Conversely, how many of the bad borrowers will come to the
Everybody.
Bank of Bill?
Yeah.
All of them.
Right.
That's what adverse selection
Okay.
is.
Okay.
And it means that when you lend under conditions of adverse selection, or grant insurance under conditions of adverse selection, you have a negative expected value, or in English, you're going to lose money.
So, Bill, tell me, if we've got this warning and we've got these 11,000 signatures on this petition, a full 10 years before the 2008 bubble broke, if you will, what happened? Why did that warning go unheeded?
Well, and to add to your list of things that make this insane, and this was the same fraud mechanism used in the savings and loan debacle. The
So we've had
extortion
experience.
We have experience, and we created a regulator, right, to respond to this kind of extortion.
Right, that was supposed to solve the problem, right?
That was supposed to at least dramatically reduce the problem.
Yeah.
That's right. And the petition of the appraisers appropriately was addressed to the executive director of that new federal agency created so that it wouldn't happen again.
Yeah.
And his name was Hansen. And he said, oh, we don't do Windows. We don't do fraud.
Yeah.
It's like, excuse me?
Yeah.
And we can't find anything in the public record of any head of the federal banking regulatory agencies doing anything in response to this warning, even though the warning wasn't just given to this sort of obscure appraisal agency. It was given to legislators. It was given to the media. Reuters did a big investigation and very long-form article about it. So, again, this kind of fraud always produces disaster, never produces anything good. So there's no upside and staggering
Lots of downside. Yeah.
Then in 2004, September 2004, the FBI, the special agent responsible for mortgage fraud, testifies publicly in front of Congress, gives a whole series of media to the mainstream media and to trade press.
Okay.
And he says,
Whistleblowing, right?
He says, no, he's not. No, he's authorized.
He's the FBI.
He's the FBI. This is what he's supposed to do. And he gives two warnings. One, he says there's an epidemic of mortgage fraud arising. Epidemic, his word.
Shocker.
And then he says, and it will cause a financial crisis. Crisis, his word.
Okay.
Unless we stop it.
Okay.
Right?
And of course, it stopped immediately after
And
that.
of course, it stopped immediately because, and I didn't actually get to do this part in the presentation because of time. That's bad. But the really bad stuff is he also testified in front of the inevitable National Commission to investigate the causes of the crisis, which is called FICC, Financial Crisis Inquiry Commission. And he testified that not a single banking regulator got in touch with him after he gave that warning.
Shocker.
Staggering, because back in the day, when we were the savings and loan regulators, our only significant ally after Paul Volcker left as chairman of the Fed was the appraisers. And for real old timers, they'll remember R41B, which was the big effort to clean up appraisal standards and to support professionalism and to fight back against that extortion, where we actually prosecuted senior bankers who were doing that extortion, got over 1,000 felony convictions. So that's the second big warning that was ignored. Again, the theme is warnings
ignored.
Parens.
right.
Ignored, close parens.
Right.
And the third was, by all amazing things, the Mortgage Bankers Association. They have had a group that was then called MARI, Mortgage Asset Research Institute, that was their anti-fraud group.
Okay.
They did a study that any lender could have made, because virtually every recipient of a liar's loan signed an authorization for the lender or anyone who bought the loan to get a copy of the tax return. It's actually a transcript. It's a machine-readable version, so it's super cheap and super fast. And of course, we don't typically inflate our income deliberately on income tax forms for kind of obvious reasons. So this is a good check.
Right.
You could check the stated income versus the actual income. And Mari did this, not at its idea, but an obscure mortgage broker who started an association of honest mortgage brokers.
Okay.
Right? And mortgage brokers had a deservedly terrible reputation even before the crisis, made even worse by the crisis.
Sure.
So they did this study, and they found a 90% fraud rate.
Wow.
And
that's a staggering number, Bill.
Yeah, one hopes.
Yeah.
One hopes.
Yeah.
And that roughly 60% of the time, the borrower's income was inflated by at least 50%.
Oh my gosh.
So if you're going to cheat, you might as well cheat.
Yeah, might as well go
right?
gangbuster.
Okay, so this is the second one of the C's.
Okay.
The appraisers, again, were collateral.
Yep.
And you're greatly inflating the value of the collateral. Now you're greatly inflating the value of the borrower's income, which is capacity.
Right.
And this is going to cause acute adverse selection, but you're doing it for a reason. As the lender's controlling officers, you're making the loan appear less risky.
Right.
So not only can you sell it to the secondary market, you can sell it at a premium to the
They're
secondary
packaging this
market.
up and tying it with a bow.
Right, and they're getting very handsomely rewarded for all of this. And the only thing that's critical is that both sides never really look. It's the financial version of don't ask, don't tell.
Okay.
And then both groups of officers will make out like bandits. Both groups will then, the entities will then lose, because it's a myth that there was no skin in the game.
Okay.
You could only sell the stuff through reps and warranties.
Right.
And that's why you see all these massive Justice Department recoveries.
Okay.
That's because of the fraudulent reps and warranties.
Right.
It's also a myth that the Justice Department couldn't have prosecuted. a fraudulent rep and warranty is a fraud. Extorting an appraiser is a fraud.
Absolutely.
Inflating a borrower's income is a fraud. These are all felonies in these things. So that was the nature of the presentation, but also then saying, look, it's ignored for good reasons. It's ignored by the industry because banks aren't entities that get to make decisions. They're not human. Officers make decisions, and the officers were making out like bandits. It's an absolute sure thing. And the regulators, because of ideology, had gotten out of the business of actually regulating.
Right.
You know, markets are self-correcting, and regulation is bad and evil, type of stuff.
Let it happen.
We tried that strategy, that theory, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And then we closed out, and a lot of the comments from the audience were, well, what do we do about this assault on appraisers that's occurring now?
I think this would be a great place, Bill, if you don't mind just pausing here just a little bit for me to talk about my sponsors. Of course, Datamaster being one of the sponsors next door. You've heard the screaming monkeys in the background. No, that is not a phone that you keep hearing. It is a screaming monkey. They're driving me nuts, but nonetheless, I'll tell you what doesn't drive me nuts, and that is the ability to save 30 to 60 minutes per report. That is Datamaster. Datamaster, of course, rolling out Datamaster 6 across the country. Had an opportunity to review that. I was looking over the shoulder of another individual who was being shown that incredible presentation. I'll tell you, folks, it is absolutely will blow your mind what Datamaster can and will do for you. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com. One more time, it is datamasterusa.com. And we're sponsored by Working RE Magazine. Had an opportunity to talk, as I mentioned earlier, with Mr. Isaac Peck. Isaac being the editor of the magazine, Working RE. And why is he here? Well, he's here because this is what's happening in appraisal. This is what's happening, as Bill has been talking about here today. This is the not only the past and the present of appraisal. This is the future of appraisal right here at the Expo. And of course, Isaac is out on the beat, if you will, gathering information that he can pass on to the great readers there at Working RE Magazine. Folks, if you're not signed up for their free emails, check them out. Go to workingre.com. One more time, it is workingre.com. Finally, we are sponsored, of course, by Alamode Software. Alamode is the software that I've been using for years and years and years. Folks, there's lots of software vendors here on the floor. I had an opportunity to chat with them. I'm friends with Jeff and with Ernie and with George and with others, the CEOs, the presidents of these great companies. They are great software companies, and I could not say enough good about them. But I continue to use Alamode. It is the software that does the value that I need, the quick turn time with the high quality and the tools that allow me to do so. It's Alamode. Check them out. Go to alamode.com or 800-ALAMODE. Listeners, we're talking with Bill Black. He is the keynote speaker here at the Valuation Expo here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And Bill, I want to talk to you a little bit about what this means for us now. So we all went through the crisis. We went through the housing bubble, if you will, and everything that occurred. And we all learned our lesson now, right? Where do we go from here?
So actually, that's how I started the talk, is the supposed lesson, because Gary Cohn, who was President Trump's principal economic advisor, has left government now, on the 10th anniversary of the failure of Lehman, gave a talk. And it turns out this expo is the swamp, right? Because Gary Cohn says that the key villains in the piece were, one, and I quote, the Las Vegas waitress.
Okay, explain that.
He invented this myth that there's a Las Vegas waitress who has no income and no down payments and purchased 6 homes.
Right.
And that she is the quintessential face of the crisis. And the second quintessential face of the crisis...
Don't say it.
is appraisers,
Yeah.
right?
I saw that coming.
So having a conference in Vegas just
Okay,
right
here we
after
are.
that,
We are, well, okay.
where we bring together the Las Vegas waitresses
And the appraisers.
and their co-villains, the appraisers.
Ultimate villains.
Whereas,
here.
of course, the appraisers are the ones who tried to warn against it.
Right.
And Gary Cohn is so ignorant. This is, again, principal economic advisor.
Right.
This is the stuff he's supposed to be good at.
Right.
That he blames the appraisers, the very folks who tried and are the only ones that tried and paid the price. Right, so the FBI tried as well, and Mari, but they didn't pay a personal price for these things. Honest appraisers were often driven out of business or had dramatic reduction in their income.
I could tell you anecdotal
and they had to
stories all
fire
day
people
long.
as well, which is also, it's obviously it's worse for the person fired, but it's terrible for the person who has to do the firing in those circumstances as well.
So, Bill, in this case, as appraisers, we sometimes see ourselves as really the only individual in the whole loan process that has should be an unbiased part in the decision making, right? Every other character plays some type of a bias or some type of a need that they have to either make money or to get the house or to resell the loan or to buy the loan or what have you. The appraiser is supposed to be that independent third party.
Right, but that's, by the way, why we as savings and loan regulators saw you as our only natural ally, because that's true of us as well when it's done right.
Yeah, right.
Because we have no stake at all, and they shouldn't be able to fire us. Now, there are 5 U.S. senators that, the Keating Five, who certainly tried, and the Speaker of the House tried to fire me and such. But, in general, that's why we listened to the appraisers, and it's why we were the allies that worked against the fraud mechanisms. But you were ignored in 2008, and of course, from 1998 to 2008
that whole
is
10
a
years.
full decade. So Gary Cohn's, phrased his claims, his myth-making in the form of question. Who broke the law? Well, the appraisers answered that question in 1998, 20 years before Gary Cohn asked his question. He's just ignored the question and the answer, the real question and the answer. So they're coming for you, is my message.
Gee, that's positive.
No, it isn't positive. It's not positive at all. And they're going to form coalitions. They are forming coalitions. So part of it's going to be price, but part of it is going to be appraisers as the obstruction, the thing that stands between, America and broader home ownership. And part of it is going to be the old thing about big data. We don't need no stinking appraisers. We've got
all the data,
and things like that.
So as an appraiser, keep in mind, Bill, my listeners are appraisers. Okay, so the question that they're asking now is,
fight back now. Form your coalitions now. Explain why you have such a good case. That's why I changed my presentation on the fly after I asked some questions and realized people didn't, when I say people, I mean appraisers, didn't understand really how it fit in to the whole regulatory apparatus and how critical they were, right? So the very best of economics, which is what I was bringing them, with George Akerlof, the creation of a Gresham's dynamic, again, where you deliberately, as the lender, create a dynamic where bad ethics drives good ethics out of the profession. But that's in the key article that won a Nobel Prize in economics. So you've got a superb case to make. And it goes back centuries that we've known about this adverse selection. And again, there's no upside of screwing up appraisals. An enormous downside. So you've got a case, but you have to make it, and you have to start forming the coalitions. And I ended on, I don't care whether you're Republicans or Democrats. What's absolutely clear is that there aren't real House Oversight Committee investigations in the modern era. If the Democrats get control of the House, they will be powerfully incentivized to bring back those kinds of hearings. So whether you're a Republican or Democrat, cross the lines if you're a Republican and identify which people are likely to be the new chairs of the key subcommittees, and go and meet them, and go and meet their senior staff who will actually do the investigation, and start the process of making the case and creating the coalition of why appraisers are essential.
Yeah, crucial.
Why they are the Horatio at the
Right.
type of thing, holding back the barbarian hordes type of thing. And do it now. Don't wait till
Right.
after the election. It'll be too late. Other folks will be way ahead of you in that line.
So lesson learned. We saw what happened leading up to the 2008 crisis. We see what's happening now. Many appraisers are frustrated, but the bottom line, your message to appraisers is get involved.
Fight back now because your survival is at stake. It's not going to be in one stroke, but it's going to be the death of not 1,000 cuts, but 20 cuts. And it's going to be, again, this whole idea of big data and AVMs, more accurate and vastly cheaper and such. Their objective is going to be the phrase that you're going to hear time after time. So again, quicker as well. That is your task for the next 20 plus years. And if you don't win in the next 20 plus years, you'll be that former.
You could always open up a coffee shop, right?
I don't know. Coffee making may be a skill that not everyone has.
Yeah, this is true. Bill Black, keynote speaker here at the Valuation Expo 2018. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Excellent, my friend. Thank you. That was great. What do you think? You felt good about that?
Yeah.
Okay, good.